Obviously, this is my country, this is my home, and the idea that let's face it, a big chunk of this country does not see me as American, it does not accept me as American, even though I know the problem is not with me, the problem is with them. It's still a little heartbreaking to me, and it still gets to me, the fact that, what is it, 44% of the country probably wouldn't see me as belonging here.
I feel like you might be an exception, my friend, where if they've seen you in something, then all of a sudden you become familiar to them in a way that um, that might hopefully engender, some positivity. I feel like you'd get that if you went to a lot of places. And when you were performing your comedy, I feel like you might know this country in a way that a lot of people don't, because comedians head to small towns and medium-sized cities and work like a club where, like you said, like, a few dozen drunk people show up and then you're there with a bunch of other comics, and you end up staying overnight in places that a lot of Americans will never see and never visit. Did you have that experience as a comedian, or were you more exclusively in Chicago and New York?
I certainly had that experience. Not as much. I couldn't do it in Chicago because I couldn't make money. So I would go sometimes do those shows just to do them. But certainly in New York, I have done tours of tiny, tiny towns. And, I grew up in a really big city. I grew up in Karachi, which is like 20 million people. I lived in Chicago. I lived in New York. So I was always very like metropolitan. Going to these small towns was really very eye-opening because I'll be honest, before I went to them, I was a little bit, I thought, oh, I don't see the appeal. Like if I lived there, I would move out. But then going there, you do a show in a tiny town. I did this show, I'm thinking of the specific one. I did a show in a tiny town in Ohio. Then afterwards, everybody went to a bar, and all the people from the show went to the bar. And I was kind of hanging out and talking to these people who'd sort of grown up there. And some of them had been like best friends with each other since the second grade. And I thought that that was really beautiful. And even though a lot of these people may not agree with me politically now, I realized that, as trite as this sounds, we all truly have a lot more in common than we don't. I know sometimes that gets obscured by just the conversation and sort of the screaming at each other. But it made me feel ultimately optimistic about where we're headed in this grand
I
experiment.
genuinely think comedians could be the great unifying force of our society, in part because of those experiences that so many of you have
That's
had.
a lot of pressure to put on a bunch of drunks and drug addicts, dude.
I was just in one place that feels very, very uplifting, and I'd urge you to try and get there. Though I guess it'd be far afield for you, and then you're probably not going to break isolation. But Dave Chappelle uh, has a cornfield near his house, and he's been doing live comedy shows there with comedians who just come and go. Essentially, I think that their nickname for it was Chappelle Summer Camp. So
Yeah.
it actually takes some of the ingredients you're describing, where it's a very small town. What people are discovering, it's essentially like a field of dreams of comedy. The whole thing blows your mind. Like you go there, and because it's a cornfield, everyone's spread out and it's very socially distanced. And you're just like, what am I seeing? I'm seeing like some of the best comedians in the world in this cornfield. And it felt quintessentially American, in part because of the backdrop. It's like just fields of corn in the summer. There's a gazebo. Anyway, so, but the comedians I talk to, because they interact with people in the same way you do, it's like, look, we all have a lot in common. We all want the same things. And there are these political discussions that are trying to pit us against each other in a way that I don't think would apply if we were just sitting across a kitchen table from each other, or if we were in the same bar at the same night. Like then you would just end up bonding over your common humanity, instead of, typing some nasty comment in, in Twitter or Facebook or what have you. So I'm serious that I feel like comedians are having a different conversation with Americans than politicians, for sure. Like a better conversation in many respects.
I think that's right. I think that's right. What you said about, one of my best friends in the world is Indian, and people are always like a Pakistani and an Indian, and it's like, yeah, those lines don't exist when you're like sitting next to someone or eating with them. I always find like if you look at the Big Sick, there's a lot of eating scenes that happen whenever whenever walls come down and people connect. And I really feel like, if the world could, if I could bring some of these people in and feed them Pakistani food, I don't think they could think of that place in the way that they think of it right now, because our food's too good.
Yes, well said. Kumail's effort will be like Pakistani restaurants across the country, letting people know that this place is too delicious to dislike.
That's right. I mean, that is what we are. We're too delicious to dislike. That should be on our flag.
I mean, that's a pretty good tagline. Comedians and chefs bringing the world together. I don't mind it. So when you talk about the politics of this moment, so you've got a green card. Are you a citizen now, or are you still trafficking? And
I am a citizen now.
Oh, so you have the freaking full rights and privileges. You took the test. Was the test as hard as they say?
No, the test was pretty easy. In fact, why I don't know how much I could say because I read something where they were like, oh, we can start revoking citizenships and all this shit.
Oh, no. You're in for good. Don't worry, man. You can spill the beans. Nothing's gonna happen. It's irreversible.
I went in and I sat with this guy and I was really nervous, and he was an Asian guy, very nice. And right from the beginning, he asked me a couple questions, and then he saw I was nervous, and he was like, "Don't be nervous. You're gonna pass. Don't worry about this." And I just thought it was really, really sweet. Like he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to put me at ease. He didn't have to make me feel better. The person who interviewed us for the green card certainly didn't do that. She was trying to get us. She was trying to get us to contradict ourselves, and she was certainly like aggressive. But this guy was super nice. So that test wasn't. It was not that hard. No. So yeah, I'm here for good. Can't get rid of me.
Yeah, look at this, full rights and privileges. So, and you're paying oodles in taxes, which will make some people very happy.
Yeah, California. It's a big percentage.
So you and I connected in part because there was an Asian American political event. We were trying to rally folks in the community. Do you have a different perspective on what's going on politically as a result of the fact that you had to essentially fight to stay in this country? You become a citizen, and then now you are, in my mind, one of the most prominent Pakistani American figures. Which, and I can relate to aspects of this because there aren't that many like Asian American presidential candidates.
No, not that many. Let me see how many I can think of.
Yeah, there's Andrew Yang, and there's so. I feel like you became a citizen just as our country started to really turn against each other, or feel like it's getting torn apart. And I take it that so about me, like I've endorsed Joe and Kamala, like, I'm trying to get folks to just vote, because I feel like the more people that vote, the better off we're going to be.
That's right.
But I feel like you have a different perspective because you're like a kind of a recently minted American. You're just like, you had to fight to get it. And then here we are at this political moment where it feels like there's a ton at stake in November.
Yeah, I always feel like, obviously, I relate to immigration issues very intimately, and the demonization of immigrants. You remember when they were talking about the caravan from Mexico and stuff? It never. First of all, I find it obviously moral and immoral and unethical, but on top of that, it's also extremely illogical because you were born here. We had to like fight to come here. We chose America as our home. We gave up our lives. We put everything on the line to choose like better lives for ourselves and our families. I mean, what's more American than that, right? The pursuit of life. What is it? Life, liberty, happiness, whatever it is. I don't remember from the citizenship.
From the test. Test was too long ago.
That was a long time ago. But to me, that should be something that's commended. I mean, these people are patriotic. They chose America. They weren't just born here. So I find that it just never makes sense to me that people are able to demonize immigrants so easily. And yeah, obviously, this election is very, very important. You know, my parents moved here after I did. My parents have been here now maybe like 12 years or so. And they moved from Karachi, and they landed here, and they love America. You know, they were like, "Oh my God, things are like much easier here." They felt really accepted. My mom was like, seeing her that happy and that comfortable, it just brought so much joy to me. And then in the last few years, it's been very difficult for her. You know, her relationship to America has changed, and the way she looks, the way she sees America has changed. Now, when I talk to her, uh, all she does is really talk about politics and how scared she is. And she says, they don't want us here. I'm like, no, Ma, there's a certain percentage of people. This is not how it is. Things can turn very quickly. And she said something that really broke my heart. She's like, we already left Pakistan. Where do we go from here? Where will we go when we have to leave here? I was
That's
like,
so
we're not gonna,
heartbreaking.
we're not gonna have to.
You know, she's been here for 12
Yeah,
years and she's happy for the first 10 years. And then the last 2 years, she's like, wait a minute. Like, I'm not sure if this place actually wants people like me.
yeah. It's been really, really, really devastating.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.